I think in owning a leather business, you're lucky if your products come back to you broken. Because it means, usually, if you're making things right, that you've been in business for a fairly long time. Now, this wallet came back to me. It's not quite broken yet. In fact, this customer reached out to me about a year ago and said, I think some stitching's starting to break. Can I send my wallet in for a restitch? And I've always offered a lifetime warranty, not just one of those warranties against manufacturer's defects, because I'm not a manufacturer, I'm just a maker. So I warranty all the stitching. If your dog eats it, then I don't warranty that, but I think that's fair. And I just ask that my customers are as fair to me as I try to be to them. If you've used a piece for 20 years and it gets torn up and ruined, and, just get another one. But if something like this happens where it's not ruined, it just needs a restitch, I'm more than happy to make sure that your piece can continue living in your back pocket or your front pocket or your bag or wherever it may live. Now, this piece is made out of 4-wing Shell Cordovan. This is a piece from probably about 2011, 2012. The shell, I probably made this piece a couple years later, but I can tell by the small stamp and the multiple stamps, and the fact that it's the old ink that bleeds onto the vegetable tanned liner, that the shell itself is probably about 12, 13 years old. There's a funny story to that. There used to be a gentleman, I don't know his name, at the tannery who he saw that people loved the Horween stamp. Now, this was the first go-around of reverse shell products being people being interested in reverse shell products. And the stamp that you see here, well, it bled everywhere. So if you made a reverse shell product, that stamp wore off within a couple months. And you can see here how it's bled onto the liner. But the gentleman that worked at the tannery knew that people wanted stamps. So you can see there's two in just a little tiny space there, and I'd get shells with 20, 30 stamps on them. Anyway, this material is great because that's a 10-year-old chunk of leather that's just taken the brunt of all the wear, and because shell is a membrane, it just eats it up, self-healing. It just gets more shiny and better looking. Now, on the inside, you have a natural veg tan from Herman Oak, and you can see that it's taken on just a beautiful caramel patina, showing exactly where all the things that were kept in it are. And when I make this stuff, I don't glue much together. I glue the liner, and that's about it. And I do that because it allows me to take the piece apart if the stitching needs to be replaced, and I'm not pulling pieces of leather apart and taking off layers of fibers. Everything keeps full thickness as I reassemble this piece after it's been disassembled and cleaned. It's time to put fresh thread on. So we're going with a Ritza tiger thread here. The old thread, I believe it was some old Tandy thread. Proper twisted, waxed thread, polyester. But this is a nice flat woven thread. And so it'll sit a little bit lower on the piece. It'll remain a little more protected, and it should last even longer than the old thread did. I chose a sort of a warm ivory color to match the age of the wallet. If I went with a bright white, you can do that and it'll eventually wear down, but this will look a little more like it belongs from the get-go. Once we burn this, we'll get to assembling the whole wallet. And that's the joy of these wallets, You give them all the love that you can give them while you're making them, and then you hand them off to the customer or the person who's going to be using them or owning them. And they really do half of the work on their own to make the piece what it's going to be. You have marks that are from repetitive motions that only that one person makes. You have little signs of travels and places where the wallet was dropped and all of that stuff. And as the maker, it's so interesting to have the pieces returned to me after all this time to see what they've become. And you can see on the interior of this one that beautiful gradient of patina from cards being stored in the top two pockets forever, and then that front pocket seems like sometimes there's not a card in it. I could be wrong, but it's just such a nice, fun, beautiful process to witness and to get wallets back in your hands that you made a decade ago. Really is quite something of an experience. So we just sew this guy up. It's not really much else to it. I've designed my pieces so that they're very easy to repair. Just hammer down some stitches here, and then we're just going to give it a nice oiling and polish it up a little bit. Nothing too crazy. You don't want to go overriding all this patina with a heavy oil or something like that. And we'll throw some beeswax on the edges once they've been knocked back down. That's good for another 10, 15, 20 years. The thing that people, I think, if you could get one takeaway from this, it's that this craft just spans decades if you let it. And it's a really beautiful thing to witness. It's very profound. It's scary sometimes. It almost, I broke down the first time I got a wallet back for repair, not because it had broken, but because it really marked the passing of time. I went into the industry as a 19-year-old young hotshot, and there I was at 30 years old, and no longer the young gun. But of course I come to terms with it, and just like this wallet, I oil the worn down parts and tend to them and care for them so that I can keep moving on, and I think that's what we all have to do. So, as I wax poetic over here, all we're going to do is throw a little bit of mink oil paste on selectively on the parts of the wallet that are a little bit dry. You don't usually have to oil wallets a lot because your hands touch them often. And the oil in your hands usually keeps the piece properly hydrated for years and years and years. Unless it gets wet, usually after the initial oiling, if you keep your wallet in your pocket, there's not usually a time you need to fully apply conditioner to the whole piece, we'll say. And because you don't want to over condition a piece either. So once we buff it back up, we're going to have our final piece looking absolutely beautiful. I'll leave you guys with that, and I hope that everybody gets to make things until the things you make start breaking and coming back for repair. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.